Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 33 of the Hockey Variety Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. This is take two. I started recording it. I got about 10 minutes into my boomer rant on baseball and why I think baseball sucks. But my microphone just decided to stop working. Now someone's mowing their lawn outside, reminding me I should probably do the same. But anyways, this is probably going to end up being a shorter podcast now because of the audio issues, and I'm kind of fed up, and I don't feel like doing all that over again. But thanks for tuning in. Yeah, I'm just going to hop right into it, though. It's weird trying to, I had some stuff, I had some little funny bits, and then it all got wiped, and it just kind of feels weird if I go over all that again. But I did kind of go on a bit of a rant about baseball, and why I think there's so much cheating in baseball, and it seems like it's okay to cheat in some ways, but not in other ways. And then I talked about why I don't get that there's some baseball players that are super out of shape, despite making millions of dollars, and they've got no reason to not be out of shape. So, or to not be in shape, whatever. So that was my little rant. You missed it. Sorry. Probably never getting that audio ever again. Let's talk about hockey. Okay, so playoffs. All right, so in the West, Vegas is up 2-0, and in the East, Florida is up 2-0 on the Carolina Hurricanes. That has been a very exciting series too. But let's start in the West because I got a little bit less to talk about that, so we'll kind of talk about the West first, I guess. And I haven't actually just been able to really tune into a lot of the games. I watched game 2, I think. Was that the one that was the matinee? Pretty sure. Yeah, Sunday. Yeah. And that was a pretty good game. Pretty close. I had a feeling Vegas they were gonna tie it, and then it was gonna go overtime. I had a hunch that was gonna happen. But you know how the saying goes, you're not in trouble until you lose at home. And Dallas has not lost at home yet. So tonight is game 3. It's probably gonna start pretty soon after I'm done recording here. Let's take a look. Game starts at 5, so yeah, pretty much when I'm done recording this, the game will start. And Dallas is at home. They have to get it done here. And yeah, you're not in trouble until you lose at home, because think of it this way. If you're the team that doesn't have home ice advantage, if you don't lose at home, it means the game is going to go to game 7, which is a good situation to be in. It's better to go to game 7 than being down like 3-1 or something like that. So I think Dallas is still in this. They've been playing good. It's just Vegas has been getting it done in overtime. They've been just a little bit better. And we will see if home ice will benefit Dallas and if they can get it done from there. So, yeah, not really too much to say there. With Florida and Carolina, yeah, I mean, these have been really tight games too. Obviously, the first 2 games went to overtime. And then game 3 was a 1-0 win. Florida had plenty of chances in the third, but Sergei Bobrovsky got the job done. More on Bobrovsky in a second here too. But the Cats have played great. And I think the Hurricanes have played pretty good too. It's just they're facing those same issues they did near the end of the regular season where they just couldn't score. They just stopped scoring goals. And in the regular season, that's kind of okay, especially when you're comfortably ahead in your division like Carolina was. But in the playoffs, they've gotten good goaltending from Anderson and good goaltending from Ranta in game 2, but that's not going to be enough. It's not going to get the job done, really. You have to be able to score goals as well. You can't just depend on your goaltending. And I know the Panthers kind of did that in the third. They didn't get a whole lot of shots in the third of game 3. But Bobrovsky, he's just been insane. So, I think some people are saying that the series in the West is already done. I don't think that's true at all. I don't rule out a team until they've lost at home. So Dallas is still very much in this. This could be a 2-2 series in just 3 days from now. But then again, obviously Vegas is in a pretty good position here. And of course Vegas could win a couple games on the road here. Don't get me wrong. But people are saying Dallas are done. I don't think so. Whereas Florida's in a very, very good spot right now. And I think they've got the series. This is it. 3-0 lead. I don't see them blowing this. Bobrovsky's been on fire. Everyone's been contributing. Barkov did get injured in that last game, We will see if he comes back. I haven't heard anything. I haven't really looked too much into it too because I had to work today. But um, yeah, hopefully Barkov can come back. But I think Florida has the depth to at least get this series done. Pray that the West goes to 7 and lots of time for Barkov to rest up and get back into the lineup. But yeah, we'll have to see. So Florida will be looking to get the series clinched at home tomorrow night. I believe the game is tomorrow night. And man, it was so cool seeing the rats getting thrown onto the ice and whatnot. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any days off. It's every second game in the conference. It's every second day in the conference finals. So there's no kind of weird days off here and there. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Sorry about the lawnmower in the background if you're getting that. Yeah, I really should be mowing my lawn too, though, for the record. But I got to talk about hockey. I got to talk about hockey with myself. So there you go. Sergei Bobrovsky. I have to talk about Bobrovsky because, I've just been so amazed by the numbers he's put up pretty much since they closed out the Toronto series. So I've got his last 5 games up there because you can see that his save percentage has improved every single game, and it's been good all 5 games. So game 4 against Toronto, they lost that game, but Bobrovsky still pulled up a 9-20, 23 saves on 25 shots. But game 5 against Toronto, that's where he really came through. 50 saves on 52 shots, and the Panthers get the job done. He had a 962 in that game, and he continued that momentum into game 1 against Carolina in the conference finals. That went to 4 overtime periods, as I'm sure you know, almost 4 full overtime periods. And Bobrovsky stopped 63 of 65 to get the overtime win. Fantastic. What a performance by him. I think that was probably his most impressive win up till this point. In my opinion, I did catch a lot of that game, and he had some big saves there. I just noticed the rats in the picture there too that I have up there. But game 2 against Carolina, that was in Carolina as well. Just 1 goal against. He stopped 37 of 38, 974. So his save percentage is getting better and better. And then, of course, last night, game 3, he puts up a 32 save shutout. So at this pace in game 4, he should have a save percentage greater than 100%. Don't ask me how he's going to make that happen, but I don't doubt him anymore. Seriously, Sergei Bobrovsky is playing like a $10 million goaltender. And, people forget he had a really good save percentage last season as well. I just looked before this. In the regular season, he put up a 913. He had a 901 this season, so I think going into the playoffs, it was pretty easy to underestimate him, especially since Alex Lyon was the starter going into that Boston series. But since Bobrovsky's been re-injected into the lineup, he's been great. And just going back to the topic of goaltender deployment, Paul Maurice, he made the right decision going back to Bobrovsky. He's your $10 million goaltender. You need to shake up the series. You're down 3-1 in the series against Boston. Boom. Bobrovsky's back in. And that was the big turning point of the playoffs for the Panthers. They have not looked back since starting Bobrovsky. I think since going 3-1, or since being down 3-1 in the series against Boston, what's been their record? 3-6-1. They're 9-1 since they were down 3-1 against Boston. If my math is correct there, fantastic performance by Bobrovsky. I don't want to be like I knew he could do this, but I feel like Bobrovsky gets underrated. And people forget he's a 2-time Vezina winner. He can be clutch when he wants to. He comes through on playoff runs. There was a few runs with Columbus. Even last year with the Panthers, he wasn't bad. I don't think he was the problem in them getting eliminated by the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's a very, very good goaltender. And, we were talking about the Conn Smythe last episode, and, he's got to be the guy at this point. And don't get me wrong, there's a really good supporting cast in Florida right now. And I'm not just talking about Barkov and Tkachuk, but there's guys that have been very impressive too. Even guys on the 4th line like Lombard and Eric Stahl as well. Mark Stahl, I thought, has been very prominent too it's really good seeing the Stahl brothers coming through. But yeah, there's lots of depth there in Florida, and they've been great, really, this team. And I can't believe I've doubted them every single round. I know going into the Stanley Cup Finals, I don't really care how the Dallas and Vegas series goes. I have to go with the Cats. This has been such a great run. I can't wait to see how many rats get thrown onto the ice in the Stanley Cup Finals. Like it's honestly, it's been such a cool run. I'm really, really happy for this team. And if it ends up being a Vegas Florida Stanley Cup final, we're going to see one franchise win their very first Stanley Cup. And I love seeing that. And yeah, I think this could be a Cinderella story that maybe doesn't work out in the finals, but this is a good team. I think everyone's underestimated the Florida Panthers because they were the number 2 wild card going in, completely forgetting they won the President's Trophy last year too. And you look at the Matthew Tkachuk, Jonathan Huberdeau trade, and I thought Calgary won that trade. Really, you look at what they got back in return, and I was like, wait, like Huberdeau and I thought Huberdeau for Tkachuk was a pretty good trade on its own, but they threw in Uyghur, they threw in a pick and a prospect. And here I am looking totally wrong by that. That ended up being a great trade for the Florida Panthers. Matthew Tkachuk was exactly what that team needed. And Sergei Bobrovsky putting up these numbers, I think that is just that is exactly what the team needed in the playoffs, I find. And just very happy for this team, and it's going to be exciting to see how things go going forward. The Arizona Coyotes. Yeah, you knew I was going to be talking about the Coyotes in this podcast. What a week it's been. So just for context, I'm a fan of the Coyotes. I think if I were ranking my favorite teams, these guys would probably be number 3 behind the Sharks and the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I've always been on team keep the Coyotes in Arizona. Okay, I think people forget how much potential is in this market. There's such a big metro population in Tempe, Phoenix, and there's so much potential there. And when people are like, just move them, just move them. I think they forget about that. And for the longest time, I've been on team keep them in Arizona. Well, I would always think okay, so the team sucks, and that's why people haven't been going. If the team starts getting good, we will start seeing really good turnouts, and then boom, Gary Bettman's plan has come to fruition, and everything's happy. Well, last week, they had the vote for the new arena, and the people of Tempe voted no arena, which to me kind of signifies, hey, we don't care enough about hockey to have some of our taxpayer dollars go to this. I don't know the details, but I feel like if a vote like this happened in Calgary, let's say they want a new arena, if a vote like this happened in Calgary where there's enough people that care about hockey, then yeah, I think the vote would pass. That might have even happened in Calgary already. But the fact that the people said no to the arena in Florida changes my perspective, because it's okay, I think this is enough. I think this might be it. And, if Arizona was dealt a better hand out of the gate, I know they moved from Winnipeg, but let's say in 1995, whatever year it was, they moved to Arizona. Let's say they were given an expansion draft like Vegas or Seattle did. I don't know if we'd be having the same problems as we're seeing now. I don't think it's a desert thing, but maybe it is because the people voted. But this team has sucked for so long. How many playoffs have they made? Even ignoring the COVID playoffs, because they wouldn't have made it otherwise, most likely. They had that conference finals run in 2012, and that was it. Really, this team has seen very, very little success. Not a lot to be excited about, except for maybe the most bombing ballin' jerseys of all time. And that's the thing. If the Arizona Coyotes move, I really hope they keep the jerseys or keep that style, because that's one of my favorite parts of this franchise is the jersey designs. Really, the Kachina's fire. They've killed the last 2 reverse retros, Granted, I prefer the purples. I really wish I grabbed one of those purple Space Coyote jerseys when they were out, but I missed that, which is fine. But yeah, I'm kind of thinking this team needs to go, and I think they're gonna move. I really do. Like, I think this has been enough, and it kills me to say that because I really wanted hockey to work in the desert. I wanted to go. I've been bugging my fiance about this. I'm like, hey, we should go to Arizona. We should catch a game, maybe while they're in the mullet, because like, how often are you gonna see an NHL team in like a small college arena like that? Like, I like the more intimate arenas like that too. Even locally here, there's two junior teams nearby. There's a junior team and a junior B team, and I like going to see the junior B team because I like their arena. It's a little bit smaller. It's a bit more intimate. I like that. Junior B or junior A? I don't know. I don't speak junior hockey language. I don't know the difference too much, but the junior league and then the one right below it. So yeah, but yeah, I think Arizona's going to move. It's not going to be Quebec City. I think the Quebec City people need to calm down because the NHL is not going to want to put another team in the East and totally mess up that balance. Because if you move a team to the East, you got to move one of the East teams back to the West. Toronto doesn't want to go back to the West. Columbus doesn't want to go back to the West. Detroit certainly doesn't want to since they fought so hard to finally end up in the East. And it's just not economical to move one of those teams, right? Like, I think Toronto was in the West at one point in like the 90s and probably before then. But it doesn't make sense because it's like Detroit's right there and Montreal's right there. Why would you move Toronto? And then moving Quebec City or moving the team to Quebec City and then having them play in the West makes zero sense as well. So that's one reason. And on top of it, like, I think a lot of Canadian hockey fans forget how much potential there is in the States. Like, there's a ton of people in the States, like a ton. And, it sounds crazy, but even Atlanta would make more sense when you just consider the potential. But then again, like, I could understand the argument that a lot of those fans they're too invested in, basketball and football and baseball. I get that. But, I think we would see hockey fans in Atlanta. I think the reason why things went so bad in Atlanta is because the franchises were run poorly. And, like, the Atlanta Thrashers had a terrible expansion draft. Like, they didn't have a chance in heck of icing a good team out of the gate like we saw with Seattle and Vegas. Well, I know Seattle, it took an extra year there. But that's for a few different reasons. Like, I think even though Seattle had a bad first season, I think they had a fair shot, really. And, Vegas had, like, kind of the advantages of GMs overreacting to the expansion draft. But you look at Seattle now, and it's like, yeah. But where would the Coyotes move? I mean, Houston's my pick. Again, just for the potential. And then, you have that kind of automatic rivalry with Dallas. That would be pretty sweet. Because kind of like, Tempe and Phoenix, like, there's tons of potential in Houston. And I think that's another thing a lot of Canadian hockey fans might not realize. But yeah, there's tons of hockey potential in Houston. I think that'd be a good idea. Kansas City would be another good one too. You get that rivalry with the St. Louis Blues all automatically. That would be sweet. Salt Lake City could be fun too. And those are all Western or Western-ish cities, enough where you wouldn't really have that kind of conference balance issue. So yeah, and there's been some interesting storylines kind of coming out of this move. Clayton Keller's agent has reached out to the organization to be like, hey, what's the scoop here? And that makes sense. This is your star player. He's committed to the team for a long time. I think he has a right to know what's going on with the team. Fair. Another story we saw come out of this, Logan Cooley has announced that he's going to return to, is it the University of Minnesota, I think? He's continuing another year in the NCAA. And it has been announced that a reason for that was the uncertainty of the Arizona Coyotes. And it makes you wonder, whoever they draft with the number 6 pick in this year's draft, are they going to take a similar approach? Now, I know a number 6 pick might not be like NHL ready as it is, but it makes you wonder if you get drafted by the Coyotes. It's like, hey, what's going on with our franchise? Are we moving? Are we staying in Arizona? Are they going to have a tough time like extending their RFAs this year and next year? Guys who are supposed to hit the market, are they going to be able to re-sign them, knowing that there's some uncertainty of where this franchise is going to be? Uh, who knows, really? They announced that they'll be in Mullet Arena next year, but I don't know. I mean, with enough money, an owner might be able to get out of that agreement. There are ways out of these agreements. I mean, if I'm putting my money on it, I say they're at least in Mullet next year. It's kind of 24-25 that we're looking at, the 24-25 season, that is. So, yeah, lots of questions here. I'm thinking about guys. Who was it that was talking about extending? Was it Lawson Krause? Like, and I bet Jacob Chikrin's like, ooh, so glad I'm out of there. I mean, things are looking up in Ottawa. That team's up and coming. They're going to have a new owner as soon as next week. Yeah, exciting times in Ottawa, but confusing times in Arizona. It's unfortunate. I really wanted things to work in Arizona, but, now that we have, like, a real hard evidence, a really good idea that the people of Tempe really don't care enough about hockey. It kills me, but I think it's time to move it. And hey, maybe in 20, 30 years, if we see another expansion in the NHL, maybe they give Tempe, Phoenix another kick at the can. Maybe enough time, let that pass, and then maybe try a fresh start with hockey in Arizona down the road with a proper expansion draft like we saw with Vegas and Seattle. I'm not saying if the Coyotes move that Phoenix and Tempe should be next in line for an expansion by any means. I think it's pretty safe to say they blew that. But, let some time pass, maybe 20, 30 years. Maybe we look at a possible expansion to Tempe and Phoenix again. But I wouldn't even get my hopes up about that, really. I mean, because there's that kind of stigma with Atlanta right now where it's like, okay, they blew it. Why give them a third chance? And that alone, I think, is a very good argument, too. Despite, I think, there is potential for hockey to work in Atlanta. Pretty sure they have, like, an AHL or an ECHL team. They've got an arena there that would work. But, yeah, I can understand why people think that Atlanta doesn't deserve another kick at the can, which is fair. So, yeah, overall, I think the Coyotes are moving. Houston would be my pick, but Kansas City, Salt Lake City, sure. I wouldn't get your hopes up about Quebec City. I know that would be fun, but the logistics doesn't make sense. There's a lot of people in the States. There's a lot of people in Houston, in Kansas City, in Salt Lake City that would love hockey. I don't know about Atlanta. I get the argument of not wanting to try a team there again, at least not now. But it looks like the Coyotes are probably done in Arizona. But they're exploring other options too with the Phoenix Suns, maybe sharing that building, even though the building's not really made for hockey in terms of like the seating and whatnot. But I don't know. I think the best option here is to maybe try to find another owner with some deep pockets and maybe move this team to Houston, Salt Lake City, whatever. And to wrap things up, I want to talk about the Leafs. Yes, along with the Coyotes, the Toronto Maple Leafs have had a very interesting week as well, along with being eliminated from the second round of the playoffs by the Florida Panthers in 5 games. And yeah, I want to look at some stats. I want to talk about some stuff that's going on and the possible future of this team. So, Kyle Dubas, he's out as Toronto's GM. Good for him. I think that's good. Get him out of there, really. I mean, I think it's good for him because, the Toronto media is just, they're nuts, right? I mean, that's probably so much stress. He put out this announcement today about him and his family being like, thankful for Toronto, this and that. I'm pretty sure he sent that out because it's kind of like, hey, can you leave us alone? Because he's probably getting, like, crazy things like death threats and whatnot because there's just so many crazy people out there. And a lot of them are also fans of the Maple Leafs or claim to be fans or trolls or whatever. But yeah, good for Dubas. I would not want to be affiliated with that organization at all, really, because it's just too big. It's just too much. And in all honesty, I kind of feel like Dubas is probably going to take a year off or maybe take a smaller role in a different organization. And I'm only saying that because people are talking about, the vacancy in Pittsburgh. And I kind of get the vibe that maybe he just needs a break. He's young. He's got a family. I get it. I totally get it. And I think that's kind of what he should do. But hey, if he wants to take kind of on a lesser management role in a different organization, I think that would be good for him too. But yeah, you can just leave him alone. But it does pose some kind of interesting questions going into the draft and what to do with the core four. So the conversation has come up again of what to do with the core four. They're talking about breaking them up, maybe trade one, maybe trade two. And this happens every offseason. Ever since they picked up Tavares, every single offseason, it's like, okay, they blew it in the playoffs. Who are we trading? And then no one gets traded. But now with the new GM coming in, they might have, I don't want to say the balls, because trading one of these guys is a big risk. So I don't blame Dubas for not doing that. But hey, I don't know. It kind of goes back to being cutthroat as well, because Dubas is very committed to these guys. It seems like he had a pretty good rapport with these guys too, and I respect that. But they bring in a new GM who's maybe not committed to any of these guys. Maybe he'll have kind of the balls to make a big trade. Again, no offense to Dubas. I totally understand not trading any of these guys, but you get a new guy coming in, he's just like, okay, who we sending off? Oh, Austin Matthews, you got one more year? Okay, bye-bye. We can get a lot for you. Who knows, right? Oh, and speaking of Austin Matthews, I think this whole Matthews to Arizona conspiracy theory I had throughout the span of this podcast, yeah, that's done. Really, I could see Matthews ending up in kind of a southern United States market, but it's not going to be Arizona anymore because Arizona might not exist. The team, that is, of course, the team might not be in Arizona by the time his contract's up. So who knows? But I know Matthews came out and said that he wants to re-sign in Toronto, but didn't Johnny Gaudreau say that? Maybe John Tavares said that in New York, I think. Players say it all the time. It doesn't matter until there's a contract in front of you and he signs it, right? So I would take that with a grain of salt. He's just saying what he has to for the media. I get that. So I have all the regular season points there. And I didn't realize how good of a regular season all these guys had. They were all over a point per game. Mitch Marner, 99 points, 80 games. William Nylander, 40 goals. I totally forgot he had a 40-goal season. So 87 points, 82 games. Austin Matthews, he missed some time with injury, but he still had a 40-goal season. 40 goals, 45 assists, 85 points in 74 games. And then Tavares played 80 games, 80 points, so he's good for a point a game. He had 36 goals, 44 assists. So they all had really good regular seasons. And then I looked at their playoff stats, and as a whole, they weren't bad, but they were really inflated by that Tampa series. These guys were great in the Tampa series. But then those 5 games in Florida, oh man, Marner, 3 points in 5 games. Nylander, 3 points in 5 games. Matthews, 2 points in 5 games, but those are 2 assists, no goals. And then in 5 games, John Tavares, 1 assist. That's it. These guys just blew it in the second round. And, I know Bobrovsky was fantastic, but when so much of your offense is dependent on these 4 guys, it makes you wonder, do you need to trade 1 or 2 of them and then really balance out this roster? Because you look at teams like Seattle where they essentially have 4 second lines. Any of their lines can kill you on any given night. Seattle is just such a fun team to watch in that sense. Whereas in Toronto, it's okay, you're this first line, you're the second line, you're the third line, you're the fourth line, right? And that's the role that you play. But it makes you wonder, is it time in Toronto that they really try to balance things out? Instead of stacking your first 2 lines, maybe take kind of the same approach Tampa did a few years ago where that third line and that fourth line can really bite you as well. I kind of think that might be the way to go. But the question is who gets traded. So, yeah, I don't think Marner, really. I don't think you give up Marner. He's a Toronto kid. I think he's a guy you keep no matter what. I don't even really want to entertain the idea of trading Marner. And And John Tavares, I think it's just the contract. I didn't look at if any of these guys have no trade clauses or anything like that, but like it might be crazy to say, but his value is high. It might not be a bad idea to trade Austin Matthews. That sounds insane. I know, but he's got a year left. His value's high. I mean, he had a 60-goal season. He's got a 40-goal season. You can really bring in a lot of good depth if you traded on Austin Matthews. Now, the question is, how do you make that work with the salary cap? Because, he makes what, $11-ish million? Like, you bring in two $4 million players and a three, but then you got to re-sign Bunting and whatnot. So there's a lot of crazy money stuff going on here too. You know what? I kind of want to get it up. I want to see who, if any of these guys have a no trade clause. Just getting the cap friendly up open. I've got to know, otherwise it's gonna bother me. Okay, so. Oh wow, a bunch of these guys have no movement clauses. Okay, that changes things. William Nylander has a modified no trade. He's got a 10-team no trade list, but the other three have the other three have no movement clauses. So there you go. Does no movement work as the same way as no trade? I don't know. I'm having kind of a brain fart right now. But anyways, yeah, that's kind of what's going on. And I don't know how badly these guys even want to be in Toronto. Really, there's so much just pressure from the media. I feel like Sportsnet is just like ruining this team, really. Because even after they got eliminated, they did another stupid poll on their YouTube page. And they were like, hey, Toronto fans, how you feeling after getting eliminated again? You know, it's just like, is that helping? I don't think so. I think this team is really suffering from how popular social media is, and I think Sportsnet has a big part to play in that. I think Sportsnet is really playing a big role in putting tons of pressure on these guys, and they're young, and it's just and John Scott mentioned in his podcast, he brought up a really good point too of these guys are a little bit privileged, right? Because when the Leafs are bad, they were just like, hey, Phil Kessel, Dion Phaneuf, why do you guys suck so much? Whereas these guys, it's like, hey, are you okay? What's the problem? You know what I mean? It's not really putting any accountability on these guys. And, I don't think any of this was on Dubas. I mean, Dubas stacked this team at the deadline. Stacked them. I think Kyle Dubas put these guys in a really good position to go on a run this year. And he addressed the goaltending issues pretty well, I thought. Considering Murray and Samsonov are both pretty good this year. Dubas, if someone were to go, I don't think it was him. But I kind of understand he went because of kind of the media awkwardness. And he was kind of hesitant on coming back anyways. But if we're trying to figure out who to blame for this season, it's got to be the players and maybe the coach. And I say maybe because I don't really know what kind of determines good coaching and how much of that's on the players, if that makes sense. All I know is there's numbers in front of me right now that say that those core four did not produce when they needed to. And I strongly believe Kyle Dubas put these guys in a good position to win this year. And they blew it. The players blew it. These core four blew it. And I think it's time for a change. I think you got to move one of these guys. I don't know who. I don't think it's Marner. That's the only one where I'm kind of like, hey, you don't move Marner. He's been great. He's underrated. He's got this very strong two-way ability as well. And of course, like Nylander and Matthews, he's young as well. So I think I know you can't extend Marner yet, but as soon as you can, I think you got to lock down Marner. I think that's next summer. They can start talking an extension with him. And, maybe I jumped the gun a bit there about trading Austin Matthews, but, if they do some number crunching here, they might be able to really revamp this team by moving him out. But there's a lot of playing around with the money you have to do. You probably have to move out Matt Murray as well and look at going with maybe a Samsonov and Wool tandem next year. I think that would be good. But then you got to say, okay, who's going to take Matt Murray, right? And who's going to be able to take Austin Matthews with that cap hit if that was the case? Same can be said for John Tavares. Like, what team is going to be able to make a John Tavares deal work, right? Without buying someone out or whatever. And Nylander had a really good year. I know he's usually the one people go to in terms of like, that's the one you should move, but maybe not. I don't know. So, anyways, I think that's it for the Leafs talk. Yeah, they've got a lot of things to address here, and it's going to be really interesting to watch this team. But if I'm betting on it, I'm thinking none of these four go, because it's all about the talk. Every offseason, it's who's getting traded from Toronto, and then no one gets traded from Toronto. None of these guys, at least, anyways. So, if I'm betting, I'm saying none of them get traded. But with a new GM, who knows? It could happen. And that's it for today's podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Sorry you missed the baseball rant. The audio, I don't know what was going on. It's like, your microphone's not working, and then I unplugged it and used the computer audio, and it was like, your microphone's not working. So I just deleted the file and started over, and looks like everything's going fine. So hopefully, when I go to like the edit screen, it doesn't like crap out on me. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Be sure to leave a like on YouTube. Greatly appreciated. Hockey Variety Podcast on Facebook. Very active on Instagram, as always. Hockey Variety Podcast on Instagram. All one word in the handle. Thank you so much for all the support. We hit 50 views on a single video finally. That was on my draft lottery reaction. And it makes me wonder, should I do some more kind of reactionary content? I think that might be, a good idea for growing this channel. But if you want to see more kind of reactionary stuff like that, let me know. I would love to do that. Maybe something in the Stanley Cup Finals, maybe something at the draft. Who knows? But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time.